Hey, what's up, guys? Christian Brindle here, and I am back with another video, doing a video with somebody that's doing big things in our industry. I have Kathe Kline here with me today from CertifiedMedicareAgents.com. Kathe, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, thank you for being here. Kathe is a very, very impressive individual. Kathe's been an agent. She's been, she's built a good book of business as an agent, and she's incredibly knowledgeable on the digital marketing and on the SEO side, of kind of building out technologies. And so I just had to have her on to kind of pick her brain and kind of talk about some of the ideas that she has in business development. So what we're going to be talking about in this video today is the stages that someone needs to go through in order to become successful and build a successful practice as a Medicare agent. I've always said in any type of business, and ours is no exception, you have to really learn to walk. You have to learn to be able to crawl before you can walk, and you have to learn to walk before you can run. And I think breaking it down in this format with stages is going to be incredibly helpful for anybody, no matter what level you're at, that's watching this, and be able to kind of give you the blueprint to kind of grow your business. So without further ado, Kathe, why don't you start off on what these beginning stages are for agents and kind of break down those stages for us and kind of what the agents need to do to pass from one stage to the next?
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I actually put this together a year or 2 years ago and thought, well, I should probably share this. So in my opinion, there are different stages to becoming a Medicare agent. So I'll quickly go over them with you and then we'll break it down because Christian, you're going to know these stages just as well as I do. So I would say that stage one is when you've decided to become a Medicare agent and you're in the pre-licensing stage. You're like,
Yeah.
What do I do? And stage two is contracting an AHIP or NABIP, depending, just certification, basically. Stage three is what I call getting started. And that's when you're trying to get your first 10 applications. That's when you are brand new, you're licensed, you're certified, you're trying to get your first 10. Stage four is what I call getting going. And that's under 100 clients. Stage five is what I call the hustle. And that's when you have 100 or more clients. Some people never leave stage five. Okay. So you just are hustling the whole time until you die or retire. But stage six is what I call building, tweaking, and maintaining systems. And generally you have 300 or more clients at that stage. And you might have a small sales team at that point. Then we've got optional stages, and that would be stage 7, and that's where you're acquiring and managing a sales team. Stage 6 is preparing for transition or sale, and then I might have messed up on the numbers. Okay, stage 7 is acquiring the sales team. Stage 8 is preparing for transition, and stage 9 is transitioning or retiring. So some people never go through all the stages. They never want to go through the stages. Like for myself, I don't want a sales team. So I'm still in the Medicare business. I still have a book of business with Medicare, and I don't want a sales team. And so that's part of the reason I started CertifiedMedicareAgents.com, because I didn't want a sales team. But so let's break it down. Let's talk about stage 1. So you have a downline.
Yes.
You probably are dealing with stage 1. So what do you think people need to do in the pre-licensing stage?
So I think in the pre-licensing stage, to me, what I always tell people is there's so many agents out there that don't have their license yet, and they're always thinking about everything except what they need to do to pass their licensing exam. They get over anxious. They put the cart before the horse. And I know that you've seen this before with agents too. And so the main thing that somebody needs to do when you're in stage 1, in my opinion, my advice to anybody out there that's studying for your test is study for your test and do nothing else. Like, study for your test, take practice exams. There's plenty of them online that you can take, and make sure that you're prepared and ready as quickly as possible, because the faster you get your license, the faster you can start building your business.
Exactly. You are right on, Christian. Just get that license out of the way and don't
Yes.
freak out about it. I mean, if you fail, you have more than one try. I mean, it's not like you're done forever if you fail the exam. And if you do fail, I'm not saying you should try to fail, but if you do fail, you're going to know what it's like.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
So it's not that hard. It's basically just understanding the types of questions they ask. Right.
Yeah.
And the practice exams, they walk you through it. I mean, some of these practice exams you're going to see that exact same question on the test, right?
Yep. 100%. 100%. It's very similar to AHIP. I would say, like the actual licensing exam and AHIP, they're very similar. I mean, AHIP is strictly Medicare, and licensing exam is a myriad of different things, but the way that they format it is very similar. And so, like with AHIP, you have the practice modules. And it's fresh in my mind because, we're in the season of AHIP now, but you have the practice modules, you have the modules, and you have practice tests at the end of every module in AHIP. A lot of times, those practice questions are the same questions on your final exam. So if you go through those and you practice them and you make sure that you know them and you can pass them, you're going to do fine on the final exam. And same is true with the licensing exam.
Yeah. And I'm kind of I was a financial advisor for 30 years, and I took so many tests to become a financial advisor. And I'm just kind of a good test taker. Yeah. And so what I do is, if you don't know the answer, there is a way to mark it and come back to it usually, right? Mm-hmm. So you can mark it and come back to it. And honestly, I just always choose answer C. If I don't know the question, I'm just going to choose the same answer. I'm not going to say B for one, C for another, A for another. I just choose the exact same answer for every question if I don't know it. And then come back to it. Kristen, you know that some of these questions are answered in other questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I did not know that, though, for many years. So like me, naturally, I was not a good test taker. So I'm the opposite when I first came in. I've become a better test taker because I've been forced to take so many tests over the years. But one thing for me, I've had that same exact thing too, by the way. If you're not sure, C is normally your best bet. The other thing, I had a friend years ago that was in the business, and he was just a very good test taker. Like he could pass, he could pass any test incredibly easily, didn't have to study, just one of those people. And he always told me, if you're not sure, he said the same thing, answer C. But the other thing is, if C just doesn't look right, the longest answer is a lot of times going to be the right answer too. And
I didn't think of that.
I have found that to be surprisingly true in my own test taking. Not all, I mean, none of it's all the time, but a lot of time the longest answer is the most detailed. And that's a little thing that has helped me over the years too. I think it's just really, reading your questions, eliminating ones that are wrong. Like, there's always going to be one or two answers that are just completely wrong. And a lot of the times the most tricky questions, there's going to be two that it could be one or the other. But the other two aren't right. So you narrow it down, you play process of elimination, and then it's really just a 50-50 thing at that point.
Exactly. And then don't forget, a lot of these questions are answered in other questions.
Yes.
So, don't sit there for 15 minutes on one question. Just if you don't know it, pick an answer, notate it on your scratch paper or whatever that you need to come back to the question and come back to it. That's what you need to know about the pre-licensing, get it over with and get done. Okay. So now we're going to go to stage 2.
Yes.
Contracting and AHIP. Now I'm going to say a story that I'm just going to tell people so they know. When I first started, I was a financial advisor, and I was recruited by an FMO. And being a financial advisor, somebody who was dealing with mutual funds, annuities, insurance, just everything, and wrapping it together and doing financial planning. Then I was doing fee-based. By the time I was recruited, I was pretty much doing fee type. And they said, come in here and do this. And I had this experience with my husband that made me want to do it, because my husband, I don't know if I told you this, Kristen, but my husband was told by an insurance agent who I think was doing med sup on the side, I don't think he was AHIP certified in anything. He told my husband that he didn't need a drug plan because he didn't take any drugs. And this is why I'm against Medicare supplement only advisors that don't certify in AHIP. I think that at least if they require everybody to certify, then there won't be bad advice like that, or there will be less of it. So
agreed.
So anyway, so I was recruited and I was like, yeah, heck yeah, I want to do this because this over here happened. And the first thing I did was I listened to my upline and they said, certify in, I'm not going to say the name of the company, but it is the biggest insurance company that we have that sells Medicare. They are the big gorilla, right? And so they said, certify here.
Does it sound like Together Healthcare? Together Healthcare.
Oh yeah, I could see. We're all
together. We're all together.
But anyway, so I certified, or I didn't certify. I got my contracting for Medicare supplement with them, along with some other companies, and I didn't do anything. I sold like 2 policies that year because I was busy doing my own thing, and then I got the letter from Big Gorilla Company saying it, because I had sold like two applications with them, and I got this letter saying if you don't sell 3 more by the end of whatever, we are not going to pay you and you can't sign any more applications. And I started freaking out. And then they said, if you do this 2 years in a row, we're going to ban you for life. You can never sell for us again. And I was freaking out. I had never heard of that before. I'm like, what? Because I had, as a financial advisor, I know that companies, if you don't write with them, they'll take away your contract, but then you just sign up again.
Recontract.
If you have, and I guess that's not how it is with Medicare. So I started it was so stressful. And then my broker, whoever, what do you call it? Broker manager said that he was going to waive that for me and not to worry. I wound up writing whatever the apps were that I needed, but it was so stressful. And so what I tell new agents now is don't sign up with that company until you know you're going to be doing applications, because I know people that have been banned for life from that company. And I don't know if it was because they didn't write enough business or they broke a rule, which there's a lot of rules that company has that actually Medicare doesn't have. And so just make sure that you talk with your upline and say, are there any gotcha rules and this is mostly for Medicare supplement, not Medicare. The Medicare Advantage, they want you to write for them, but the Medicare supplement, I would say just be careful with the contracting. If you're doing it on the side and you're not real serious about it, you could wind up getting banned for life from Big Gorilla Company. I don't know any other company that does that. Do you, Kristen?
No, they're the only one. They are definitely the strictest company in the entire space. I won't say that they probably, don't have any. I wouldn't say that they don't have any reason to be strict and be paranoid, because they're huge, right? They have a lot to lose, and so they take it very, very seriously. But they probably take it a little too seriously, to be honest with you. But yeah, they are the one that really is. That they're very strict on, doing a certain number of applications, like Kathe said, typically 5 a year. And yeah, I mean, they're very strict. Another thing I'll tell you with the same company, and this is going to be helpful, I think, for anybody that's, because sometimes it's easy to get into the Facebook groups, right? And I run multiple Facebook groups. I run the second largest Medicare Facebook group that there is for agents. And there's a lot of talk all the time about being licensed in multiple states, contracted in multiple states. That same company, now they're not the only one that does this, but most do not. If you get licensed in 10 states, let's say, and let's say there's a state that charges an appointment fee to get you contracted. Not every state has non-resident appointment fees, but plenty do, like Texas does, Florida does. There's plenty that do. And if you contract with that company as a non-resident outside of your home state, and there's an appointment fee, they're going to charge it to you. And it's going to show up on your commission statement like a chargeback. And that doesn't get talked about a lot. And so I always tell people, my advice typically is when you're first getting started, try to be the superstar in your backyard first, because it's going to save you a lot of money. Unless you're trying to sell in California or New Jersey or some of these other states, the commission's the same, whether it's in another state or it's in your home state. And there's plenty of people in your home state. Unless you're like in a state that has 6 people, which there's not that many of those.
South Dakota.
Yes, South Dakota or
South Dakota
Wyoming or yeah, or one of those. But I would say, like, now if you're like on the border of a state and you pick up like one additional state that's right next door, that's another thing. But like, I never have understood why people think they need to get licensed in 10 states or 15 states right off the bat. I did not get licensed in my second state until I was in year 3. And it didn't hurt me. So that's another thing I wanted to add to that.
Yeah, that is so true. Now, I do want to mention something. So I am that same company's, I'm one of their whoop-de-doo performers, and they pay my out-of-state contracting fees or whatever. They do pay that for me now. But that's because I have so much business with them now. And it took me years. This is not something that I built up in a year. It's not something that I built up in 6 months. It took me years to get to that point. And they do have perks for their top producers. But yes, people can do that in their first and second year. But yes, people can become famous football stars too. The chances of you becoming a top agent in your very first years is probably small. And when I first started contracting in other states, I did it solely because my clients moved there. And then when I started CertifiedMedicareAgents.com, I got licensed in states so that there would be somebody in case somebody searched that state. And now I'm getting agents, so I'm dropping those licenses. So for example, Alaska. Although I have family in Alaska and I go to Alaska, I don't necessarily want to be licensed in Alaska because I'm not really going to do business there. So now that somebody signed up for the directory, I'm not renewing that. Also, I think Rhode Island is probably one that I'm still looking for people. So I'm licensed in a whole bunch of states. And not only is it complicated, I think it increases your liability, because there are states with different rules. Like, for example, Missouri, they have an anniversary rule for MedSup, which is different than the birthday rule for California and Oregon and Nevada. And, all these states have different rules, and you don't want to give bad information to somebody. So also, when you are licensed in your own state, guess what? It's so much easier to get referrals. You can build a name so much faster if you focus in one area, and you can get networking partners to send you people. I mean, I'm with you, Kristen. I think you should focus one state in the beginning. And I know people that have been licensed for years that refuse to get licensed in other states. They just give the referrals over. And so you don't have to get licensed in another state if your client moves. I don't know. I make friends with my clients, so I like to. Yeah. I like to do that, but it's complicated, and sure. I'm trying to simplify my life right now.
Yeah. I think it's a great point. And I think it definitely, it overcomplicates things. It also is it's pricey. And when you're new, you don't have a lot of revenue usually coming in, because you're just starting out, you're building the house and you're at the second or third brick of the house. It's kind of the way that I look at it. And it's not to say that you can't add the states later. It's not to say that, some like Kathe said, that's a prime example. That's actually why we started adding states in the first place, was we had people that we needed to write in other states, so now we're in 46 states, but it's a lot, it's a lot to keep up with, making sure that your licenses are renewed, that you're meeting the standards and the and the requirements of every state, and some are more strict than others. And
like Florida.
Yes.
Florida, you can't have Medicare in your name if you're in Florida now.
Yeah. Florida.
that? How are they going to police that? I mean, really?
That's a great question. I don't think they know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I don't think they do either. So, it is what it is. So we won't turn this into a Medicare name question, because there are other.
Yeah.
We'll do that in another show. So we're talked about AHIP. So people freak out about AHIP. AHIP annoys me, actually, Kristen. I mean, because of it's not AHIP that annoys me. It's all the certifications that I have to do for all of the carriers, because they're exactly like AHIP. And it's like, I'm doing the same thing over and over again 50 times in July, August and September. And it's very annoying to me to have to do this over and over again. But if you know how to take tests, you should be able to pass AHIP. And AHIP is just annoying. And there are, of course, you can get the $50 coupon with any carrier. If you sell enough with one particular company, they will actually cover AHIP for you. If you use their link, if you become a hoity-toity producer with them, then they'll cover your AHIP. So I usually try to wait and because they're not the first to come out usually. And so I wait and I do AHIP through that link so that I don't have to pay. Even though some carriers reimburse, like some FMOs reimburse you, or they do this or they do that. I just like to not have to pay in the first place.
Yep.
So that's what I do with that. So if you should be able to, but the contracting, I wanted to make sure that everybody understands that you don't necessarily want to contract with everybody. You want to be a little bit selective with your contracting. Of course, work with your FMO, because some FMOs have rules about you have to contract with these 3 carriers or 5 carriers or whatever in order to get our stuff, right? So all FMOs are different.